Hi guys, ArchieLuxury channel. And today I'm doing a paid review for Nick. Nick, he sent me $20 US and he wants me to start a series. If you want me to keep this series going, keep sending me 20 bucks with a topic and I'll expand anything further. So Nick has said to me, "Hi Arch, I have a suggestion for your YouTube channel. Start with a series called ArchieLuxury on." I'm sending you $20 to start the series with ArchieLuxury on whiskies. Best regards, your friend Nick. Wow, whiskies. What a fantastic topic indeed there. And I got to tell you, let's have a little bit of a discussion. Let me throw a few little pointers in there. Whiskies. Now, this is a very, very good topic. I love whiskies. Now, with whiskies themselves there are a few different basic terminology. Let's have a look at a basic bit of terminology. I'm holding up a Glenlivet. This is a Founder's Reserve. And this is a single malt Scotch Whisky. So let's have a look at a few little things here. Firstly, it's a Scotch Whisky. Only product from Scotland can be called Scotch. So a Japanese whiskey could never be called Scotch. An Indian whiskey could never be called Scotch. Only product from Scotland. So let's have a look here. This is a very nice drop here. I'll just pull it out. It's the Glenlivet, and I got to tell you, this is one of my favorite drops here. This is the Founder's Reserve. Now, interestingly, it doesn't actually have an age indication because the problem is when you put a label on there that says 12 years old or whatever, the danger is that unless all the whiskies in it, because normally with whiskies they add a few different varieties and things together, the problem is they've all got to be at least that old. So you could imagine all the nannies, the consumer advocates, if one of them turned out to be a little bit younger than the label said there. Now, whiskey itself there, how should you drink whiskey? These are special this is very dirty whiskey glass. These are special whiskey glasses. Now, should you add water, ice? What should you do? Well, traditionally, for a good whiskey, you want to avoid adding water because some people feel it changes it. So one alternative is these new things which are called whiskey stones. Now, you put these in your freezer and they're basically blocks of marble, and they then cool down your whiskey without leaching water into it, diluting it. So I'll just let that sit for a little bit. Whiskey itself there, these glasses, this is how do you drink a whiskey? Let's have a look at that. Well, they're in these glasses here, so you can smell the bouquet. What does it smell like? And also give it a little bit of a swish around. Just get a swish around happening. A little bit hard with these stones in it, I must say. Give it a bit of a swisher around there. We get a nice flavors and aromas there. So how do you drink a whiskey? Well, this is what you should do. You open your mouth. That is beautiful. That is a beautiful whiskey. And that is how you sample it. So basically, taste it. Don't just gulp it all down. Taste it in your mouth. Swish it around a bit. Savor the taste. And then swallow. So that's how it's done there. Now, whiskey itself there. I wanted to... let's have a bit of a look here. Whiskey itself there. Beautiful product from Scotland. The other big thing is that this here is a single malt Scotch whisky. And I used to be a huge Johnnie Walker fan, and then all of a sudden I found those key words. It was actually by watching The Professionals, CI5 with Bodie and Doyle. And when I went to my my bottle shop to investigate a bit further, I discovered that, you know, the whiskey which I thought was the greatest whiskey in the world, which was Johnnie Walker, the Johnnie Walker Company, they had a thing called Johnnie Walker Blue Label. And I've actually got one, a bottle of Johnnie Walker Blue Label just here. This is a blended Scotch whisky. Now this is probably the finest blended Scotch whisky that you can get within reason. And I gotta tell you, what's the difference between blended and single malt? Very, very good question indeed. What is the difference? And a blended whiskey has whiskies from... A blended whiskey has quite a few distilleries. Whereas a single malt normally would mean that it's from one distillery itself. So it doesn't mean that it's just one cask. That is something different again. You have single cask whiskey. Single malt, single cask. Which is that is what you'd call a really premium drop. Well, the Johnnie Walker Blue is not exactly cheap. But the single malts, I really do love single malt whiskey. Is it a blended better? A blended whiskey tends to be more consistent, okay? Because they blend it to balance it. Single malts, I gotta be honest with you, if I was buying a basic whiskey, I would say this is a great whiskey. The Glenlivet single malt whiskey. This is Founders Reserve, which is sort of their base. I think it's at least 12 years old. But they're moving away from that because some of different whiskies peak at a different time period. So that's why they're moving away from the age thing, which I don't particularly like. I do like the age. The number means something. So I really think a decent whiskey, if you want a decent whiskey, the Glenlivet, this is non-offensive. Founders Reserve is a great drop. If you really, I would say single malt whiskies are probably, I like to experiment with single malts. However, good blended whiskey, like the Johnnie Walker Blue Label, I mean, that is superb. Absolutely superb. I love the Johnnie Walker Blue Label. I think that's one of the finest blended Scotch whiskies of all time. Absolutely, absolutely do love that myself. I've got no qualm in recommending that to the fellow punters out there. I would say, okay, you could say, well, Johnnie Walker Blue Label is a bit overrated. Well, look, the problem with Johnnie Walker is that they've become too successful in their own right. So, you know, the problem with that is that huge quantities of Johnnie Walker. I can remember tasting Johnnie Walker Blue Label in the late 90s. And I seem to think it tasted better when it was a rare, special whiskey. Now, it's the Chinese market they consume a hell of a lot of whiskey, and whiskies are made in small quantities. Johnnie Walker Blue Label used to have up to 60-year-old whiskies in it. Now, you can imagine how little of that 60-year-old stuff is being put into it now. So it was ultra exclusive years ago. Now they don't really talk about the 60-year-old whiskey, so heaven forbid they've stopped doing it. I would really say, in my opinion there, if you're buying whiskies, blended whiskey like a Scotch, I mean, Chivas Regal is a blended. You know, there's so many nice blended Scotches. Johnnie Walker is, of course, the most famous Scotch whisky, which is it's a blended, it's not a single malt, it's a blended Scotch whisky. And, you know, we all start off in Scotch. Usually the trick we take is that we start off with Johnnie Walker Red Label. Then we get, you know, we start the corporate career, we get into Black Label. Then we think, oh, okay, then we might go for, they had Green Label, which was malt whiskies. There was malt whiskies. Wasn't single, but it was malt whiskies. As opposed to Johnnie Walker, which itself is it doesn't say malt whiskies. So, okay, so that it's more what they don't say. That's the key ingredient there. But I would honestly say to you that with the whiskies themselves there, I think single malts are a really good thing. Johnnie Walker Blue is superb. I've had Johnnie Walker Xr, that's a superb drop. They had Platinum. It's an 18-year-old Scotch. Very nice, but expensive. I must say, one of my favourite drops, I think Glenlivet is great value. Glenlivet 18 is remarkably good. I really love that as a drop. I think that's great bang per buck. There's many different whiskies around there. You can go to the Islay Scotches, which have a very peaty, that's like a salty flavour to them. I love the Ardbeg, the Laphroaig. There's so many wonderful whiskies there. Generally speaking, the older the whiskey, the more expensive and the smoother. No nasty, vicious burn. And you know, it's in a lot of whiskies they add colour to get that tinge there, because a new whiskey is white. It takes years. It's the barrels the whiskey is put into where it leaches the colour out of the wood. So that doesn't happen overnight. So for young whiskies, they often add caramel, the colour. So, you know, that's something that you've got to be aware of. I like some of the really peaty whiskies. There's some absolutely fantastic. Now, if you're a novice in the whiskey world, you probably wouldn't like the salty peaty. It's a bit of a shock. You think, ooh, what is that? But later on you think, ooh, that was pretty good. You develop taste for it. It's like when you start off drinking alcohol, you like sweet things. You go for the Aspli Spumante, you know, those sort of very sweet drinks. Later on, you start to go for dry wines. It's the same with whiskies. And I've got to tell you, with a lot of the blended scotches, you know, they are quite, there's nothing shocking there, but a very nice Islay Scotch. Salty, oh, it's an amazing feeling to have from sampling that. Whereas the Glenlivet is not going to be nothing so controversial. It's a good whiskey, but nothing controversial. So it depends how much controversial taste you really do want there. So that's what really gets those juices moving. I gotta say, in all honesty there, you know, the really exclusive whiskies, I had a really good fan a couple of years ago. This is probably the most exclusive whiskey I've ever had. I've kept it just as a souvenir. That's how good it was. And this is a very small boutique whiskey. ARCHIE'S Cask collection. And it's all gone, I'm afraid, there. But what it did have on it, this was a 35-year-old, aged 35 years. And on the label itself there, it actually had the details. This was a spray side, told you the cask, which was a bourbon hogshead, and it even had the cask number. It had so this is probably the most exclusive, the most expensive whiskey I've ever had in my life there. Very, very high strength. It's 58%! 58%! And it was smooth. You could have drunken it and you wouldn't even know. Then you get completely blotto. A very, very nice fan sent me that a number of years. I may never, ever taste a whiskey as good as that again in my life. But that was really beautiful. Really beautiful. And I'm just going to smell it. It's all gone. I flushed it out with soda water years ago. But that was probably the most amazing whiskey I've ever had. Yeah, it just evaporates in your mouth. It's just smooth, smooth. So it's funny, you know, this here, you look at, say, a Johnnie Walker, you've got the amazing packaging, etc., etc. This is a small boutique distillery. It's not fancy-pantsy, you know, they've kind of, you know, they got stick-on labels, so it's done on a smaller scale, you know, so that's ARCHIE'S that's got the blurb, but for different ones they put a different label on, see, so it really, really was this is what the really, really exclusive whiskies are there. So you can see it's got the cask number, how many bottles came out of it, and super, super exclusive, super, super cool. I mean, that's one of the great things in doing my YouTube thing, is that I get some amazing gifts. I may never ever get that again. That was superb, absolutely superb. And I actually shared that with my closest and dearest friends of the time. So you can never forget that. That was a great gift which I shared with friends and fans of the channel. I wasn't cheap on that. So yeah, that is the goodness that it is. So whiskey itself, I gotta tell you, is Scotch whiskey the best? Well, the Japanese, I love my Japanese whiskies, amazing. One of the most startling whiskies is the Amrat Fusion, and it's an Indian whiskey, and everyone wants to hate it. Then you sample it, and you think, geez, this is amazing stuff. And it is amazing. That's the wonderful thing. And it's to change your opinion. You have a certain opinion on Indian whiskies. You think, oh, this would be just rubbish or this or that. And then you taste it and it's amazing. That is what I love about whiskey. You go into something with a predetermined idea and then it's different. So whiskies, look, there's many drinks. There's many drinks there. You can't drink them all unless you're an alcoholic. But a good whiskey. I love a good whiskey. Love a good whiskey. Nothing like a good whiskey to relax and enjoy life and contemplate things. I've been very fortunate. I've had some really wonderful fans. Have given me some beautiful things. So I'll never forget the ARCHIE'S, which I was given. And I think he also sent me some Cubans. I had some 3 Cuban cigars. Cohibas, which are just amazing. Amazing. I've had some really amazing times. So there you go. I'm Archibald Chesterfield III. This is the new series. The new series, ArchieLuxury on whiskies. If you send me $20, give me a title, I'll talk about it on the channel. Thank you, and keep watching my YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and tell your friends.